So this is my number 44 mini bike. This is the very first mini bike that I built. I think I did it 2017. I think it was that winter. It's originally a Fox, I believe a spoiler from the early 70s. It had a swing arm on it, and it would have had the angled motor plate that you see on a lot of vintage bikes, and then the swing arm, 2 shocks, had 10-inch laced wheels, and it did have a suspension fork on it, but I upgraded that. The reason I made the bike a hardtail was because I built it to race at Flat Out Friday, and at that time the rules said that they had to be hardtails, which kind of a bummer in the end that I cut up a vintage frame, but it's pretty nice as a hardtail. It's nice and lightweight and rigid, and it's a fun bike to ride. The front end is a Yamaha PW80 front end that I modified. The wheels are 12-inch pit bike wheels. I get a lot of questions about these wheels, as to what they are, where they come from. You literally just search on eBay 12-inch pit bike rim. These will come up. Try to watch for the 1.85 inch width or wider. Kind of hard to find. Otherwise, I've seen 1.6 and 1.4s, and those are just too narrow for these style tires. They're fine for the motocross style tires, but when I run these wider tires, they don't work. As far as modifying the frame, this backbone is original. The seat tubes are original. I actually got a little tweak in them that I left in there. Could have straightened it out, but I didn't really think it was worthwhile. This lower rail on the right side is original. And then I added the rear triangle to that side. But this side I needed more room for the torque converter. So I ended up cutting it right here. So here forward is original, but from there back is that's a new tube back to the axle. I did put there's a slug inside of that tube to reinforce it, and welded it. This motor plates are new. This is new. Side bar on it for protecting the torque converter. That's not original. And then the rear axle plates, or axle boxes, whatever you want to call them, or something I made up. And it worked out really well. Rear sprockets from PBI Sprockets. I just filled out their custom form, and they had it to me in like 2 days. Been very happy with them. So bike is back apart right now because I kind of rushed it at the time, and there was a lot of rust underneath the existing paint on the frame. So I had the frame sandblasted so I could get a good look at what was underneath all that stuff. And there was a lot of pitting, but there wasn't any cracking or anything too crazy looking. So I just did some extra reinforcing on it than what I did before, and then some fresh paint on it. And these are new wheels for this bike and tires. And I just gotta go through the engine and re-gasket that. And this is the engine for the 44 bike. It's a Tecumseh Snow King 5.5 horse power. Literally came out of my snowblower that I used for years. The actual model number is LA195, so it's 195 cc's, and it's a flathead, so the pretty old technology. Did a little bit of porting on the block, nothing to see here, but it's an aluminum bore, which makes it not a very durable setup, and you really can't get performance parts for this motor. I did some research and found out that you could put a ARC rod for the overhead valve Tecumseh in it, so I did that. Still have a stock flywheel on it with no governor, which I know you're not supposed to do, but we run this with a torque converter, and I don't think it ever sees over 5,000 RPMs. And we ran it for a few years and haven't had an issue yet. I did bead blast it, the flywheel, and then painted it with this Rust-Oleum oil-based brushed on paint, and that was years ago, and it's holding up really well. And I think the paint makes it easier to see if there's any flaws or any cracking starting, anything like that. You can see on the block that was pretty polished up, but the salt is pretty rough on it. We were running this thing in the winter around here when the parking lot was clean. There's still salt there, so it got in there and chewed it up pretty good. So yeah, there's no bearings in this motor, it just rides right on the aluminum case. Stock camshaft. I did mill the head. Can't really tell, but so basically milling the head, and then the little bit of port work that you can do on these is all I really did for performance modifications. Then I built this exhaust system, this intake manifold, and it's just a Walbro PZ20 clone carburetor, you know, from China or wherever. Literally a $20 carburetor. Works really well. It's actually the carburetor I run on my number 486 race bike on the Predator 212. So I'm just going to take this all the way back apart and get a good look at everything and make sure it's all going to work for a few more years now, hopefully. Got the engine all apart. It doesn't, it's about what I expected. No major failures, but there's a lot of scoring in the cylinder. This is just an aluminum bore engine, so I expected it to be bad. It's a little worse than I had hoped for. And the piston's pretty bad too. So the board's actually pretty sloppy, so the piston's getting a little bit of a rock to it and getting some excessive wear at the bottom of the skirt there. And the other side doesn't really have that same thing, but it's definitely got some nasty scores. So that's the ARC billet rod. And that bearing surface looks pretty good on this. This isn't like the billet rods on the Predator where they have a bearing insert like cars use. So it just runs the aluminum right on the crankshaft. That's one thing that doesn't look bad. See, the bearing surface for the crankshaft is definitely not great looking either. So I think what I decided to do at this point is to just let's clean it all up and put it back together and continue to run it. As bad as the scoring looks, this thing really didn't noticeably smoke at all out the exhaust. It was using oil. I'm almost wondering about running just a little bit of two-stroke premix in the gas. Maybe that'll help preserve the cylinder a little bit. But yeah, I think I'm just going to put it back together and continue to run it until maybe something catastrophic happens, but it may just keep on going.